Hi, I'm Dr. Mary Willard, faculty member with Johns Hopkins University's Krieger School of Arts and Sciences. I am thrilled to be joined by Alaina G. Levine, award-winning speaker, writer, career coach, and consultant. Alaina is the author of multiple books, including Networking for Nerds and her newest book, Create Your Unicorn Career, which is available for pre-purchases now and will be out soon. Today, she will share her expertise and advice for building a unicorn career through professional development, networking, and leveraging what makes you unique. Thank you, Alaina, for joining me for this interview. Can you tell me more? What is a unicorn career?
Thank you, Mary. I'm so delighted and honored to be with you and all of Johns Hopkins today. So, I define a unicorn career as a customized, authentic career. It is aligned with your values, so it allows you to be yourself 100% of the time. And it's a career that brings you joy, meaning, and money because you have got to get paid appropriately for your contributions to society. So, when we talk about building your unicorn career in biotech and related areas, what we're talking about is building a career that truly honors your humanity, your goals, your needs, wants, all the things that make you human, really leveraging and honoring your authenticity to build a career so that you can land a job or even create one yourself where you are solving the problems and serving the communities that are meaningful to you. So it really is about leaning into who you are truly, being honest with yourself and aiming to really catalyze all of the different aspects of who you are as a person to make the impact on the world that is important to you.
That's a wonderful foundation. Now that we've framed what a unicorn career is, let's talk about how students and professionals can actually begin charting their direction. Because biotechnology encompasses a vast range of disciplines from therapeutic development to computational biology to regulatory science, students often feel uncertain about where to focus their efforts and how to enter specific areas meaningfully. If students want to contribute to therapeutics and translational science but feel unsure of where to start, what advice do you have for clarifying a direction in a broad field?
It's so challenging to figure out what you want to do for your career. We've all been in the situation, particularly when we were at university, where maybe an advisor or a PI or a professor says, "Hey, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your career for your vocation?" And for many of us, it's very much a luck-based model that we are leaning into, right? We just happen to have luck associated with finding out about a particular career space, whether it's therapeutics, something else in the biologics, big pharma, small pharma, biotech, medical devices, other types of aspects. We just happen to be lucky that a professor happens to say, "Hey, do you want to do research in proteins? Are you interested in this particular internship that I just found out about it?" And so when we're building our unicorn career, we shift from a luck-based model to a logic-based model, and we actually start to collect and analyze different types of data. And so when you're building your unicorn career, I actually built a data-driven model to help my fellow nerds, and I say that with true honor and celebration because I'm a nerd and in STEM myself. But to help my fellow nerds build their unicorn career, we look at a three-component model, a three-component framework. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at intrinsic data, extrinsic data, and then building a bridge of marketing between the two. So intrinsic data comes from your head and your heart. It's what makes you a human. It's not only your skills, it's your loves, your hates, your needs, your wants. It's your definition of success and impact and meaning. It's really all the things that are important to you, both to live the life that you want and to have the career that makes sense for you. So we have to analyze and collect and analyze the full data set of who you are. And I find that most STEM students and postdocs and those of us who may be early in our career, we tend to undervalue ourselves and therefore undermarket, undersell, but also underexplore for career opportunities, going back to your question. So we have to start by looking at the full data set of who we are. And we pair that with what I call extrinsic data, which is about the opportunities, the ecosystems, sectors, industries, organizations, career paths, departments, and so forth. And we get that primarily from networking. And I know, Mary, you and I are going to talk more in depth in a few minutes about networking, but I just want to say that by really engaging in a pro generosity perspective, when you are networking, you can get access to information that can help you make the right choice for you. So whether or not you want to go into one area of biotech or another, or you've heard something about a particular area of therapeutics that sounds interesting to you and you want to explore it further, networking is going to be the way, because that's the way you get access to hidden information and how you plant seeds with the other person so that we can build a win-win relationship over time so that I can potentially even create my unicorn career with you and for you. And then the final component is that bridge of marketing, where once we're talking to people and building those relationships, and I'm hearing about people describe gaps, that's what we're listening for. Gaps in systems, problems in systems, challenges that have not been overcome in organizations. I hear people describe a gap. I go back to my intrinsic data and I realize, wait a second, I have the skill set and the love to be able to solve that. And then the third component kicks in, where even in real time, I might say, well, Mary, that's so interesting that you're developing a new business associated with therapeutics, particularly in this disease space. Maybe there's something I can do to assist you, because for the last 2 years in my postdoc, I've been doing X and Y. How can I help you? How can we collaborate? And so when you leverage that model built on the spirit of generosity, where you're trying to solve problems for other people, you can begin to think about where else you can be, and you can build relationships with people who will give you those breadcrumbs, those clues about what are the opportunities and how to break into therapeutics or protein identification and characterization or X or Y or Z. And that really is the key to get to advancing your career pretty much any time, but in times of uncertainty, which, right now in December of 2025 in the United States, there's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of uncertainty in the job market. And to get access to the hidden opportunities, or to have opportunities created just for you, we have to engage that three component model. And we really have to do so with a sense of curiosity, of listening, looking to solve problems for other people, and really advancing this concept of, I want to serve, I want to help. And when you do that, you get access to hidden opportunities. Does that help, do you think, Mary?
Yeah, that perspective really helps demystify the process. Another challenge that students mention is mindset. Many students have imposter syndrome when surrounded by peers with strong computer science or math backgrounds. How can they reframe that mindset to recognize their strengths?
I get that. And I so appreciate that question, Mary, because guess what? Checks notes, I have imposter syndrome. As I was getting ready for our conversation today, I'm beginning to think, letting imposter syndrome creep into my brain and convince me that I don't belong here. And, of course, that's bananas. That's ridiculous that I would think that, but it's also ridiculous for any of the listeners to think that they don't belong here, wherever here is. This is your time. This is your space. STEM is for you any way you make it happen. And whether or not you have a particular background in computer science and software engineering that you think is needed or not, it doesn't mean that this is not the place, space, and time for you. So the way I navigate imposter syndrome, and by the way, I've interviewed people about this for articles that I've written for Science Magazine and other magazines. I've talked to Nobel laureates who have imposter syndrome. I've talked to CEOs who have imposter syndrome. And this is all to say that probably almost every human has imposter syndrome. And so, just like with your unicorn career, we look at it from a data-driven perspective. We're going to look at imposter syndrome from also a data-driven perspective. So first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that it exists. I'm not going to pretend that I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm okay. No, I have imposter syndrome. It sucks. I'm going to acknowledge the data, and now I'm going to aim to solve the problem. But here's the thing, Mary. Your colleagues with backgrounds in biotech and other areas of STEM, you actually all have an advantage in navigating and combating imposter syndrome, because in the same way that your unicorn career framework follows the discovery of science process, where we're going to be looking at data, analyzing the data, making hypotheses, experimenting and then iterating, and then reevaluating and taking it in a new step and a new direction. Similarly with imposter syndrome, we're going to look at the data, we're going to experiment, iterate, and move on. So the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that it exists. Number two, recognize you're not alone. We all have it. Number three, recognize that chances are, if you have imposter syndrome, it's probably because you are on the right track. It's because you are rising, because you are looking to improve. You are making a difference and impact. And the more impact that you make in STEM and in biotech, the more you may feel like you are an imposter because you're serving more people and you're giving better quality of discovery and service to the people and communities that are important to you. The next thing I love to do with imposter syndrome, Mary, is I love to curate the most creative curses that I can come up with. And I promise I will not share any of them today, but I am very creative in my cursing. And if my brain is going to dare to try and disrespect me by telling me that I'm an imposter, I am not going to let my brain do that. So I am going to start screaming at my own brain with the most creative curses that I can possibly come up with. And the creativity aspect is to create fun. I do believe in extracting the comedic value from every experience, but I also think it's wise for us to hear us say, even out loud, and you can do it privately, but out loud, no organ, no brain of mine is dare going to disrespect me and tell me I don't belong here. And I'm going to start cursing at my brain, not myself, but my brain. And the point is number one, I want to be able to hear myself champion myself, speak up and speak out for myself. But I also want to make it clear that I'm in control. See, imposter syndrome doesn't happen out here. It happens in here, which means you and I, we actually have control over it. So by declaring it out loud, it helps to remind me and ground and center me that I actually own this situation. Another couple of steps. I also love to play devil's advocate and compare and contrast. If I think that I'm an imposter here as a postdoc in this laboratory, let me look at the other trainees in this laboratory and see and compare and contrast their backgrounds, their education, their skills. Do they actually belong here? Do they deserve to be here? Did they work hard to get here? Chances are the answer is yes, which means that if I'm here, it's okay that I have a different background. It's okay that I come with a different set of skills. I'm here because I am actually providing quality, because I do belong here. And the other final thing I'd say, and this relates back to your original question of what if I don't have the stronger programming skills or computer and data science skills. I think the thing is to remember is that if you're in an opportunity, whether it's a trainee opportunity, an internship, a research project, if somebody is investing any kind of resources in you, that means that they have absolute certainty that you can provide value just as you are. And that as you get better, you're going to provide even more value. See, nobody is going to waste money or any kind of resources. Nobody is going to waste or like hope. Hey, I hope that she has talent. No, it's not that. They see your attitude, they see your brilliance, they see your talent, and they see your potential. And they know that even if you don't have this particular skill, language, package, platform skill right now, they know that you can actually learn it. And they are investing in the future value that you're going to be creating. And I think remembering that people do not share or give or offer resources if they don't have complete understanding, appreciation, and certainty that they're going to get a return on that investment, and ROI is so important to be able to stamp out imposter syndrome. So the bottom line is that we all have it. We're going to have it tomorrow, the next day, and so on and so forth. But if you look at it as a data collection and a data scrutinization exercise and instill in yourself a number of different triggers that will then trigger actions that will serve and support you, you can move beyond it and begin to even laugh about it. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's such a great way to reframe confidence and to regain that control. Once students have a sense of direction, the next challenge is learning how to articulate their unique strengths and professional value, especially in a field where many individuals have similar academic backgrounds. Could you talk about how to identify and articulate your personal value proposition in biotech roles where many candidates may have similar training?
Absolutely. And I'd like to actually do this by telling you a story of somebody who is at Johns Hopkins. So many years ago, I had the great pleasure of interviewing Chris Skipwith, who, as you know, works for Johns Hopkins. And Chris did something so amazing to orchestrate and land his postdoc appointment. I wrote about it for Science Magazine, and I still use it as the true example of how to articulate your value proposition through networking to get access to hidden opportunities or even have an opportunity created for you. So Chris has a wonderfully interesting background, and he has a PhD, I believe, in biophysics, and he wanted for his next season of his unicorn career, he wanted to go and do a postdoc. And in particular, he was interested in medical devices. And he knew that if he was to pursue a postdoc appointment in medical devices, coming from biophysics, he did not have the typical or the requisite background that you might find for a traditional candidate in one of those roles. So if he had applied for advertised positions that said, wanted postdoc, he would probably have a competitive disadvantage. So instead of doing that, he took a different tactic. And I love this, and I suggest all of us do something like this. So what Chris did was he did a literature search. He looked for people, professors who were doing research in medical devices, but he specifically looked for people who were doing research in medical devices that either did not have approaches or were not using approaches that he had in biophysics, or had specific gaps in their programs that he could help fill with his value proposition from biophysics. And then instead of emailing these professors that he found from doing this literature search, instead of emailing them and saying, do you have a postdoc? Do you have any money? Do you have funding? Me, he wrote to them and said things like, Dear Dr. Levine, I wanted to introduce myself. My background is in biophysics. I'm very interested in going into medical devices, and I think there is an opportunity for us to collaborate. Would you be open to an informal conversation? Now, just to be clear, I'm paraphrasing, I'm using some of my language, but this was the gist of his message. And one professor in particular at Northeastern University in Boston, she saw his email and she was intrigued because every email that she gets for a postdoc appointment is all about the other person trying to get something from her. And Chris's email was, I want to see what I can do to serve you. I want to see how I can help your research group advance in a novel way with my unique, diverse background in biophysics. And so she took a meeting with him and she created a job for him from scratch. It did not exist. It wasn't an advertised postdoc position. When she and him came together and had a conversation in the spirit of generosity, where he shared through that bridge of marketing, this is the skill set I have. This is how I could potentially help you. And he did so with great respect and honor, not in a cocky way, not in like, I'm the greatest thing ever, not at all. It was, I want to see what I can do to help and serve. She saw this as a value add, and she created that job for him. And when I interviewed her for this article, she said something so profound, and I never forgot it. She said, he taught us about biophysics and we taught him about nanotechnology. Really, really bringing home the point of when you create your unicorn career in the spirit of generosity and you communicate your value proposition in terms of what it is you can provide the other party to help them solve a problem. What you're doing is you're getting access to hidden opportunities, but you're also creating a win-win. See, I think a lot of times we think of job getting as me trying to get something. It's actually not. It's about what can I do for you? And if you reframe it that way, not only do you get access to more opportunities, but back to your point about communicating your value proposition, you find it easier and simpler to communicate your value in the language of the other person, framing it according to a gap that you can help fill because you see it as an act of generosity. See, I think a lot of times in STEM, and my background's math and physics, we tend to think that selling and marketing and self-promotion are these dirty, smarmy things that are just icky. And in actuality, it's actually an act of honor because what you're doing is you're communicating to another person how my background, skills, experience, knowledge, know-how can help you solve a problem. And there's no higher honorable act than looking to help somebody solve a problem, to help them advance their agenda. And so when you communicate your value proposition, what you want to do is you want to, number one, use their language, communicate using their verbiage so that they understand you can jump in immediately. Number two, you'll be able to pick up on that language and how to frame your value proposition through networking, through talking to a lot of different people, because people will begin to share different projects, programs, products, even vocabulary, and you'll be able to capture the patterns so you can then translate your value proposition into that. And number three, if you're looking to serve other people, you want to really make sure that you're communicating in terms of the problems that you can solve. And so the very simple method that I use to communicate my value proposition is problem, solution, result, spin back. So what is the problem I am helping to solve, or I'm going to solve, or I have solved? What are my solutions that I've used and leveraged? What are the results of my solutions? And if you can quantify your result, even better, because numbers give me context and significance to your problem solving ability. And then the fourth component is what I call the spin back. The problem solution result has just been about me and my value proposition, but the spin back turns it back around to you and frames everything I just said in terms of value that I can provide for you. So it could be something like, I have this background in science communication, and I know how to help people become stronger public speakers. And Mary, I know how important public speaking and science communications is to your work at Johns Hopkins, and I could see how we could collaborate on a project like, a video interview, for example, on science communications and building your unicorn career. What do you think about that? And I could even add that question at the end. So that's how I look at communicating my value proposition. I do so with joy, but I do so with honor and respect for you and how I can help you.
That's an excellent roadmap for creating opportunities in the spirit of generosity. With a clear sense of one's goals and values, network building becomes more focused and intentional. As we've discussed, professional connections are essential in biotechnology, where opportunities often emerge through relationships, visibility, and engagement with the broader community. So let me ask you this. Many students are balancing work, family, and graduate school. How can they build a professional network efficiently when time is limited?
I love this question because when I deliver speeches at conferences and at universities, this is often a big question that is asked. I know I need to network, Alaina, but I don't have time to network. So how do I do it? And I get it. You are being pulled in 32 different directions, probably minimum, as a human being. And then as you're building your career and your education and you're in your training, it's potentially even multiplied more on a logarithmic scale. So we're talking about a lot of pressures on you. I want to acknowledge that first and foremost. So this answer to your question goes back to what exactly is networking. And so I want to give you and your listeners a specific definition because I think a lot of times there's a lot of misunderstanding about what we mean by networking, which is hilarious because our PIs tell us go to the conference and network, or I think it's important for you to network, but they don't actually tell us what that means. And so what is networking? Networking is not me meeting you at a conference and then never speaking to you again. That's one conversation. Networking is about building a mutually beneficial relationship with two people over time. So the definition of networking that I use is that first and foremost, it starts with the first point of contact. So you and I, Mary, are coming together to build something fresh. It is about building a win-win relationship over time where we're both providing value to each other and it's investing in the long haul. So it is truly about the spirit of generosity. Will I benefit? Absolutely. You will benefit, I will benefit, and even more interestingly enough, because we're going to come together and create something fresh, the community is going to benefit too. And because we're both members of the community, we will both benefit. But when you approach networking with this concept of generosity, right? I want to see what I can do to help. You get so much out of that opportunity. You get so much out of that. The reason why I mention networking, and I actually say it's the most honorable endeavor in which you can engage because it is built on the spirit of generosity. The reason I mention networking in the context of answering your question about how to do it when you have so little time and so many things on your agenda is because if you approach networking with not, I need to talk to somebody because I need a job out of them, or I got to find somebody who works for Pfizer because I got to get an internship or a research project or a grant from Pfizer. Instead, if you shift it and reframe it in your mind of, I want to find somebody who works for Pfizer because I'm really interested in the company and I want to see how I can position myself for success for a career at Pfizer, or how I can serve Pfizer with my background, or what I can do at Johns Hopkins to serve this community of Pfizer. It becomes so much easier. There is a weight lifted off your heart and your mind, and you're able to do this, and the momentum builds for you to be able to do this more and more. So that's the first thing I want to think about. The other thing I want to think about is that networking does not have to happen in person. So this became especially relevant during and after the pandemic, when we didn't have the luxury of going to conferences or traveling all over the country or world for colloquia or for in-person engagements, or even going down the street in Baltimore to network with the biotech community in Maryland. This was all done online, and we're seeing that that continued. So to be clear, the majority of the networking that I do, the relationship building that's based on win-win, is almost exclusively online. It's finding people just like you, Mary, coming together. Let's have a Zoom coffee, an informal conversation to explore collaborating. We come together, we explore what we're knowledgeable about, what our skills are. We're also testing our vibe. We're seeing if we have a chemistry, if this can actually blossom into a full-blown partnership. And so when you look at in building networking into your career advancement plan and your career exploration plan, don't think that you only have to network with people on campus in Baltimore, in Maryland, on the East Coast, in the United States. It can be worldwide. And related to that, pick numbers, pick some milestones and goals that are realistic given the time constraints that you have in your career and in your education at this moment. So if that means that you only have the time to go on LinkedIn, maybe for 20 minutes a week, 20 minutes to explore and find somebody that works for Pfizer, LinkedIn, connect with them, send a customized invitation, tell them why it is you're interested in them, and then ask them if you could have a 15-minute Zoom coffee. If it's one 20-minute slot a week, do that. And if you find after 3 weeks you did really well, increase it by another 10 minutes, or say I'm going to find 2 people a week. But start with low numbers so that you can ease on into this. And I will say, the first few times that you reach out to somebody, usually about the first 3 times you reach out to somebody, it is going to feel weird and cringe and awkward. By the fourth time, it'll be slightly less. And by the fifth time, it will be much, much easier. And then you will develop a process, a system, a template for finding people, asking them for meetings, and having the meetings. These are the kinds of things I talked about in my first book, Networking for Nerds. And in my new book, Create Your Unicorn Career, I go into excruciating detail of how to actually do this so that it builds into your schedule, whatever your schedule happens to be right now.
You've articulated that beautifully, and it raises another question for our students. Can you expand on that topic? How can international students or fully remote students create professional visibility if they are not located near biotech hubs?
Absolutely. And so I'm very interested in the biotech hubs or clusters. And as you and your listeners know, when we talk about biotech hubs and clusters, what we're talking about are community-based critical mass of organizations in a particular industry, in this case, biotech, and here's the key, they are all tied to a geographic area. So knowing that you want to work in biotech is going to be very useful. It's going to be very useful for you to know where are those biotech hubs in the world, right? And there's quite a few on the East Coast, and there's even some on the West Coast, as we know, and there's, of course, many biotech hubs around the world as well. So first and foremost, you need to know where these hubs are. And second of all, what I would do is now that we know that networking doesn't have to happen in person, it can happen virtually. We can start to find people that are in these cluster organizations, in these hub organizations, and reach out to them. And we can start building a visibility or a brand amplification program such that we are constantly posting on professional social media platforms, in particular like LinkedIn, where other professionals in biotech are going to be. What we're aiming to do with both of those tactics is we're trying to become a known quantity in the community. Somebody who, going back to your question about value proposition, has a promise of value that ensures that they are communicating their skills, their expertise, their knowledge, their background that can help solve a problem. Now, I just used a word brand. I want to clarify what I mean by that. A brand is not a logo, it's not a tagline, it's not a cartoon character. A brand is simply a promise of value. And you and I, we have a brand, we have a promise of value. The international scholars that we're speaking to right now, you all have a brand, a promise of value. Johns Hopkins has a brand, a promise of value. And at our core, at the very basic level, our brand, our promise of value is our promise to deliver excellence, dependability, and expertise in everything we do. What happens is the more visibility you have in the community, the more your brand is known. And the more impressions that people have of your brand, the more likely they're going to think of you as a value creator, especially when they have a need. And many years ago, there was a paper written by a number of physicists in one of the physics journals about how many brand impressions it takes for a product in particular to be in front of a buyer's eyes for that buyer to make a buying decision. So how many times do I have to see Coca-Cola before I am thirsty and I realize, wait a second, I'm thirsty, therefore I'm going to get a Coke. So I have a pain point and I'm looking for the value add that's going to alleviate that pain point. And I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like 7 or 8 times. So it's very similar to you and I, Mary, and to the international scholars and all of us who are looking to advance in biotech. We need to have multiple brand impressions, multiple visibilities before an individual sees us. And when they have a need that passes in front of their gaze, they think of us. So the way you build that visibility, really what it comes down to is, I would say, two actions, going back to the original tactics. Action number one is you want to get to know the biotech hub organizations in the communities that you want to work in. So I want to give an example of why this is important. And so I've been writing about clusters for quite a while, speaking about them for quite a while. I live in Tucson, Arizona. We have a very well-known optics cluster, an optics hub. And there's a lot of optics companies here in Tucson. And part of the reason for that is because there is a very well-known College of Optical Sciences as part of the University of Arizona. Professors, postdocs, grad students spun off companies decades ago that began to build the number of companies in optics that are here in the community in Tucson and Southern Arizona. That attracted more funding from outside of Tucson, it attracted more talent, it attracted more companies to set up shop and facilities here in Tucson. So there's this wheel of money of growth within the optics community. What happened was, and this is very important in biotech as well, as these organizations in optics grew in this region, and there was a critical mass, the leaders of these organizations came together and said, we need to start an association. And in this case, at the beginning, they called it the Arizona Optics Industry Association. And this association had a board of directors, they had events. All of their goals were aligned with aiming to grow the optics industry in Tucson. It means that they had knowledge of what companies were growing and scaling and were getting big government contracts, or what companies were folding and laying people off. They knew about the hidden growth of the optics industry in Tucson and in the greater Arizona. When it comes to building your biotech career, you want to, number one, identify where the biotech hubs are. And for the communities, if there are particular cities or regions or states or provinces or nations that you're interested in working in, you want to identify where are the biotech hubs in that area, or what hubs are in those particular areas. Then you want to identify, does that hub have a particular association? When you know that that association, that biotech association exists, you want to contact the board of directors, ask them if you could have a 15-minute appointment, tell them you're interested in building your biotech career here and want to learn what you can do to position yourself for success. Get on their mailing list, get on their social media, start following them, start engaging. So that builds visibility, and it helps the people who are making decisions about the biotech community in that community know that you are a value add, so they think of you for an opportunity. And the second tactic is really building growing your brand on LinkedIn so that people who are professionals in the biotech space begin to see you more and more and more. And that doesn't mean that you write braggy like posts. It's about writing posts that are valuable and will catch the eye of this particular community. So writing things like 5 things that I learned about biotech in my class at Johns Hopkins, or here's how a data scientist can shift into biotech, or going back to your original question, Mary, I'm interested in going into biotech. I don't have as big of a background in data science. Here are 3 things I'm doing now to bolster my profile so I will be valuable in this community. And all those types of posts communicate your brand to the community and also communicate value to the community. So now the community sees you as a known quantity who continues to deliver value and they think of you for an opportunity. So those are my 2 go-tos.
Those are great strategies. Professional development is also a huge component, so I'd love to talk about that next. Long-term career success in biotechnology requires continuous learning and adaptability, especially as research technologies, computational tools, regulatory frameworks, and interdisciplinary collaborations evolve rapidly. Students also often navigate major career pivots. So, with that in mind, what strategies help professionals adapt to new tools and technologies without feeling pressure to learn everything? And in the same vein, how can students stay current on evolving regulations and global policy without becoming overwhelmed?
And Mary, I really appreciate that question because you are being so clear and open. This is an overwhelmingly challenging problem to have. It's a real problem. It's a dynamic problem. It never ends. It's always shiny object syndrome, right? How do I go for this? Do I get this degree? Do I get this certificate? Wait a second. I need to get this skill. But wait a second. Now this is the skill that's important. I don't know what to do. We're seeing this a lot with a lot of the Gen AI tools, right? Everybody's like, I need to get on this bandwagon. So here's a couple of ways that you can navigate this. Number one, there's a saying that the greatest investment, I'm paraphrasing it, but the investment that you can make in your career that is guaranteed to give you a return on that investment is investing in yourself. So investing in skill development, but I would also say investing in networking. And I'll give you an example of that in just a moment, but I just want to share this idea that the more you have conversations with people, you will get a sense of what are the skills that are important to learn and hone. What are the certificates that you want to have so that you are known in this community as providing value? And you'll get this after you have many different conversations with people. You will actually be able to hear them describe it. And I actually encourage you when you are networking and building relationships with people that this question should be part of your repertoire for any networking that you do. And so the question can be, Mary, could you tell me a little bit about how professional development is viewed in your company and in your industry? What are some of the go-to professional development programs or organizations or certificates that would help me to be even more valuable in this space? So you can ask a question like that. So these questions, as you network, not only will you get the specifics of this strategy, this certificate, this skill, but you'll also hear how people describe it. And that will give you insight into the value of these particular skills or particular opportunities themselves. I think professional development, one of the best professional development investments that you can make in your career is joining your professional association. So that doesn't just mean the biotech hub of Baltimore or the biotech hub of Boston or San Diego or wherever it is that you want to go work in. What I also mean is for example, the Biophysical Society or the Society for Neuroscience or the Society for X or the Society for Y. And I think too often in the STEM fields, we tend to think that the biggest benefit of being a member of a STEM association is that we get a discounted rate to the conference or that we can potentially publish in their journals if they offer that opportunity. But that's actually not the biggest benefit. The biggest benefit, in my opinion, is the network that you get because you have access to the membership directory, but also the access to the professional development that that association offers. And many, many, many associations offer some kind of professional development. Everything from informal, from like doing webinars that you can attend on career development and skill building, but then also some associations even offer certificates and other types of certifications. So these are the kinds of things that I think would be very, very helpful is to, you can even ask people when you're networking with them, what professional associations are you a member of? How has it helped you in your career and your professional development and your career advancement? What conferences do you go to? Because the conferences also do provide professional development as well. So a few years ago, I joined my professional association, the National Speakers Association. As you know, I'm a professional speaker. I wanted to be around and learn from other professional speakers. So I joined the NSA, National Speakers Association. And I knew to do the following because I've been talking and writing about networking for many years. But what happened was when I joined finally in the summer of 2021, I actually enacted a listening tour. And I went and ended up talking with dozens and dozens and dozens of members. And I found these members by looking at the board of directors, the local chapters board of directors. I found people on Facebook. I found people mentioned in articles and on webinars. And I just reached out to them. And I had many, many, many conversations with other professional speakers. And I asked them questions about what they do in their career, how they learned, what skills have helped them, how do they look at their unicorn career as a professional speaker. And over those many conversations, I gained such valuable data, extrinsic data, about how I could grow and scale my own unicorn career as a professional speaker in the STEM career space, even though those people were not in the STEM career space. They were professional speakers, and I was learning from them. And I was getting ideas about how to be better at my own discipline, at my own vocation, at my own craft, while talking to people who are very diverse in their own careers, but we all shared that we were all speakers. And I think that idea of when you join a professional association, looking and seeing what they have to offer, what are their professional development and career development offerings, taking advantage of those, taking advantage if they offer career consultations with a career coach. American Chemical Society does that. You can get, I think, for free career coaching from people who have expertise in this space when you join the ACS. That's the kind of professional development that you absolutely want to pursue. And then having lots and lots of conversations with people, I think can also make a difference in advancing your skill base.
All good points. Let's discuss some of the specific spaces our students want to enter. Many of our students aim to work at or alongside government agencies such as the FDA or NIH. How can they approach networking when those organizations may feel harder to access?
So the idea of networking when we're building these win-win relationships is we're not only building relationships with the people that we know, you want to think bigger. And so, Mary, you and I are now connected. We're building a relationship even in real time right now. We're investing in that relationship. And now, Mary, you now will have access to people in my network. And likewise, I will have access to people in your network. So you are a first degree connection, but you will now have access to people that I know, and they are second degree connections to you. And those people have connections to other people, and that's a third degree. And there's a wonderful theorem, which we all know, 6 degrees of separation, which has been proven that every person on the planet is connected to every other person by no more than 6 degrees. So I know somebody who knows, this person or that company or that government representative. So that's very important for you to remember. And I think oftentimes when we're building careers, particularly, let's say we're looking to get funding opportunities in the government, or we want to build a career in government, and there's challenges like what we're facing right now with uncertainty in the government and policy space, knowing that you, just because you think you don't know anybody in government right now, doesn't mean you don't know people who know people in government. I always say as a joke, but it's truthful. If you want a job in Beijing, you want to network with two different types of people in Beijing or have a connection to Beijing, and everybody else, because all roads lead to Beijing, because everybody in your network, all the way through the multiple degrees, somebody has a connection to somebody in Beijing. And so by leveraging that concept, it actually makes it easier to connect. So going back to the idea of working in government, with government, alongside government, even when there's challenges like what we're facing right now, it doesn't mean that the government doesn't stop working. So being able to find people using the professional associations, that their directors, but also your alumni, right? Johns Hopkins University is one of the most prestigious and significant universities in the world. And because of your proximity to the capital of the United States of America, you have alumni who are all over the world in federal agencies all over the world, not just in the US, but you happen to have a lot of alums who stayed in the Washington, D.C. area who work in and with the federal government and related governments and NGOs, non-governmental organizations. So you can leverage your alumni community as well within Johns Hopkins to find people who work in these organizations. And remember, you're not reaching out to somebody to say, how do I get a job in this government agency? Because if people feel like they're being used, that will shut them down, and the relationship that you are aiming to build will cease to be. But if you approach them and say, I'm in this stage of my career where I want to learn more about how I can serve in the public space as a government employee for the future, would you be open to a 15-minute conversation? I'd love to know what I could do to position myself for success in government while I'm here still at Johns Hopkins. I'd love to see how I can help you as well. People are going to be more likely to have that conversation. So really leveraging your networks, leveraging your alumni relationships with Johns Hopkins, your proximity to Washington, D.C., and really understanding that just because there's challenges right now does not mean that there's not going to be an easier way forward in the future. And by building those alliances and those connections now, where you could potentially help the other person too, even right now, what you're doing is you're actually investing in the unicorn career that you can build for yourself, but also the other person's unicorn career as well. So it's not over at this moment. It is just changing. It's a dynamic, complex system.
Absolutely. And that's very encouraging. Many students are also navigating career pivots, which brings me to this next question. Many of our students are considering shifts in career direction, for example, moving from bench research into regulatory work, from lab science into bioinformatics, from academia into industry. Others want to return to a field where they haven't worked for many years. What advice do you have for reframing and translating past experience so that it clearly aligns with a new career path without feeling like they're starting over?
It's a really good question, especially right now, because a lot of my coaching clients and the people in my audiences are asking me the same thing. They're dealing with the same challenge. They are pivoting, they're shifting. Excuse me, they're using the challenge that we have, the uncertainty that we have in science and research and academia, excuse me, and in the government here in the United States as a springboard to look and see what else can they do. Now, I myself have my degree is in mathematics. I worked in the physics department for many years. I've been amongst STEM my entire career. I also have been a freelance science writer for many decades, and I've been a professional speaker for many decades as well. But it wasn't until the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, when my position at the University of Arizona was eliminated. I was on a soft money government, well, it wasn't government, it was a foundation that funded my program that I ran. The program that I ran was a professional science master's in applied science and business. My job was getting my students jobs in industry, and we ran out of money. And it was the Great Recession, and my position and the program were eliminated. So I was now forced to pursue other opportunities. And given that it was the Great Recession, there were very few jobs to be had. So the only solution that I could come up with in the interim was to go full forward into my unicorn career as an entrepreneur, as a professional speaker, a science writer, a coach, and a consultant. And it was a very challenging time for me. But up until COVID, I thought that it was the best professional gift I had gotten because the universe, hashtag the universe, kicked my butt out of the university and forced me to explore other avenues. And this is not to say or to minimize any pain that any of you may be experiencing. If you are dealing with a layoff, if you are dealing with a funding shutting, the budget freeze, it sucks. And I am so sorry, and you have my deepest compassion. The way forward is to look at what you can control. And one of the things you can control is your attitude and really thinking about this moment. What can I do to leverage this moment so that I can use it as a springboard to do something, as my colleague says, different, better, or more for myself? So by looking at this as a fire, a spark to do something different, you can actually build your unicorn career even in a challenging period of time. And you can orchestrate that pivot successfully. And the way to do that is going back to that framework of the unicorn career, being honest with yourself. What are your needs and wants? How much money do you need, right? What salary do you actually need? What are your non-negotiables? How do you define success and meaning and impact? And what are your skills? Talking with a lot of people, going on a listening tour, and engaging with as many people in the community as you can. And by community, I don't mean a geographic region. I don't even mean in biotech exclusively. I mean in STEM broadly, or if you're interested in biotech and pharma, talking to people in those types of companies and companies that serve those companies. We want a big, broader view. And as you have these conversations and you learn more about the needs and the gaps, and you hear about an alignment between your skill and their need, you get better at communicating via the bridge of marketing. You're able to find opportunities to enable that pivot. But I will say something that's very important is that a lot of times the people around us who are in many ways very well-meaning do not know how to advise us when we're making a pivot. And let me give you an example of that. When I was graduating with my mathematics degree, I actually graduated at the cusp of a new, very positive economy here in the United States. Prior to that, that had been a very bad economy. As I was graduating with my degree, the economy had suddenly changed for the better. There were jobs everywhere. And so I realized, as much as I love mathematics, and to this day I do love math and I solve math problems for fun, I knew that I did not want to be a mathematician. I didn't want to do it 100% of my time. And I went to my advisor at the University of Arizona, where I was a student, Dr. Math, and I asked him, what else can I do with my math degree besides be a professor? And the other two jobs I knew of was a teacher and going into actuarial studies. What else can I do, Dr. Math? And Dr. Math literally turned to me and used the word nothing to describe my career prospects. Now, Mary, bananas, bananas. What was Dr. Math actually saying? It wasn't that he was saying there was nothing that I could do. He was actually inadvertently sharing the universe in which he occupied. See, Dr. Math was like so many advisors. They are existing in a two-dimensional plane of their own experience, their own past and present. My advisor only knew what it was like to be a tenure track faculty at an R1 university. So just like an ant walking around on the ground can't see a hole here, a hazard here, food here, somebody to collaborate with because they can't look down and see the bigger picture, my advisor was existing on a two-dimensional plane. He couldn't advise me about what else a math major could pivot into because he occupied this plane of existence. But what you and I have to be, especially if we're thinking that we may want to pivot, is we have to be 3D creatures in a 2D world, or more accurately, 4D creatures in a 3D world. We have to be able to look down and see connections, opportunities, gaps that we can help fill. And when you do that, and you do that through networking, when you do that, you're actually able to find opportunities that maybe other people weren't able to find. And you're also able to create a unicorn career from scratch. So this goes back to the idea of when it comes to building a relationship with government, to work in government or to work with government, or to find non-traditional funding mechanisms, given the constraints on the federal agencies right now for funding, what this means is we have to take a four-dimensional perspective, look at the larger picture, be holistic in our thinking, and be creative in looking for places where we can actually solve problems for other parties and add value with our unique, diverse lived experiences. It's not easy, let's be honest, but it is doable. It is absolutely doable.
I love that framing. To wrap up, let's leave our audience with a thought that can guide their next steps as they pursue growth and opportunity in the biotech landscape. If you had to distill today's conversation into one key message, what would you want biotech students or professionals to take away?
That the multiverse is your professional queendom, kingdom, and meandom. So, in other words, there is not one job, there is not two jobs. The future is not binary. There is potentially infinite connections and threads that you can weave into a unicorn career that truly honors who you are and what it is you want to do and how you want to serve. And you can be paid appropriately to do so. You have more power, choice, and value in your career advancement and your career planning and job getting than you may realize. And when you engage with the spirit of generosity in building your unicorn career for yourself, the really beautiful thing is that you're actually giving permission to everyone around you to do the same. See, representation matters. You and I know that. And so every time we live our own truth, when we honor our authenticity and serve others in the way that is unique to us, in a way that is value driven for them, and is truly authentic to who we are, what we're doing is we're telegraphing to the people around us that you can do this too. There can be a new realm that you can create. There can be a multiverse of professional opportunities that you can pursue. But you have to start by looking at the data. And as scientists, if there's something that we love more than anything, it's data. So leverage your data. And I never, ever have to wish you good luck because you are scientists, you are in biotech, and you rule the multiverse. But I will say, enjoy the amazing adventures towards your unicorn career.
Thank you so much, Alaina, for an inspiring and energizing conversation. Your perspective brings clarity and motivation to anyone working to build a meaningful career in biotech. I am grateful for your time and the wisdom that you've shared today.
Thank you so much, Mary. You're such a good interviewer, and I so appreciate the honor that you've given me to collaborate with you today.
Thanks.